Welcome to ABC Interactive English. I'm Kiki.
And I'm Mike.
And today is day 2, part 2 of our...
Can animals predict the weather? It's a very interesting question with a few interesting answers. We haven't really fully answered the question with like a yes or a no, but we definitely have some kind of. We have butterflies and birds who know when the winter is coming. That's pretty good.
And so they travel south.
And so they travel south. That's exactly right.
But we also have some sure signs from cows and sheep.
Cows and sheep, I think, are more useful on a day-to-day basis. If they gather together, the sheep, or if the cows lie down, rain's a-comin', so you gotta go and get your umbrella or your raincoat on. That's kind of more useful.
Yeah.
Right? I know when winter's coming. I don't need the butterflies to tell me. But I do want to know if it will rain in a few hours. I need to move somewhere with a field and cows, though, because I live in Taipei City and there's probably no cows, but maybe some hamburgers near my house, but that doesn't help.
Oh, that's a bit dark.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
You mean you didn't see the sheep outside Taipei 101?
Nope. What? You're joking. I wish there was. That would be pretty cool. Anyway, so let's get to our article today and see what other animals can help us know when to put on our rain boots.
When the weather is stormy, the air pressure changes. That's painful to birds and wolves. As a result, birds fly low and wolves cry out before a storm comes.
All right, so let's find out more about how animals can help us predict the weather. And now we're going to be looking not at temperature, not at rain, but at air pressure. Ooh, this is an interesting one. This might be why your bones sometimes tell you the weather's changing too.
Okay, well, let's get to our article. When the weather is stormy, the air pressure changes.
Right, yeah. Low pressure, I think, means storms are coming. High pressure usually happens on sunny days.
Okay, so what is stormy? Stormy is an adjective to describe the weather being it's going to rain, it might snow, but specifically heavy wind.
That's right, storms.
Right, storms are really big rain and you'll feel a lot of wind everywhere and the rain is a lot heavier. So it's a very powerful moment for the weather.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, we often have special words for different kinds of storms. So a typhoon is a really big storm, a hurricane, like they have in the Atlantic Ocean. That would be rain and wind and things like that. A blizzard is another type of storm with wind, but snow. So that would be a winter storm in a cold place. But these are all storms. And if you have all that wind, all that rain, all that stuff that makes you go, I'm not going outside, it's probably quite stormy around. And yes, weather, when we talk about weather is really just about changes in pressure in the air all around the world. Pressure causes wind, wind causes storms, and so it goes. What is pressure? Pressure is basically force pushing on something from the outside. If you go swimming and you try to swim down under the water, after just a few meters, you will feel the water pressing in on your ears or pressing in on your chest. That is pressure. And in the same way, when people go into space, they need to wear special clothes to keep them alive because there's no pressure out in space, no air out in space. And of course, humans, we can't live that way. So air pressure is the weight of all the air pushing down on us, and water pressure, like you feel underwater, is the weight of all that water, and that's why you feel the water more than you feel the air, because of course water is much heavier. But if it's pushing on you from the outside, that is pressure of some kind.
Hi, I'm Tina. 我们来看一下刚刚课文里提到的单字 Stormy 形容词暴风雨的 We canceled the trip because of the stormy weather. 因为暴风雨的天气，我们取消了行程。Pressure 名词，压力、气体 或液体的压力。The pressure in the deep ocean is very high. 深海中的水压非常高。接着我们回到课文当中。
All right, let's get back to our article. So I mentioned there about how water pressure can hurt your body. If you swim too far below the water, under the water, it can push in on your ears and it can actually hurt you. And the same is true with animals in the air. It says that the changes in air pressure, that's painful to birds and wolves.
Ooh.
Birds and wolves? Okay, birds are very small and delicate and fly. Wolves are giant dogs. But still, they can feel the change in pressure, air pressure. So what does this mean? Well, as a result, birds fly low and wolves cry out, "Oh!" before a storm comes.
Well, that's very interesting.
That is very interesting.
I guess for birds, they have to fly low so they don't get blown away.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
And they're very delicate. I mean, their bones have like holes in them to help them fly. So I can see. But wolves? And if wolves feel the pressure, why don't dogs? Because they're very similar animals. Interesting.
Well, here we have the word low, and in this case, it's not the adjective.
No.
We are using it as an adverb, and we are referring to where or how the bird is flying. The bird isn't flying up high, it's flying low or near to the ground or not as high up. So in this case, that is how we are using low.
Okay, so if you see the birds in your neighborhood that normally fly over your home, and now they're flying just over the street or over your head, they're flying low, and that means a storm could be coming. Huh, I didn't know that.
我们来看一下刚刚课文里提到的单字 low 副词像低处的 The bird flew low over the field 那只鸟低空飞过田野文法的部分刚刚提到了 cry out 大声喊叫 cry 在这里指的是喊叫我们来看看这个例句 Nina cried out for help when she saw the fire Nina 看到火灾时大声喊叫求救接着我们回到课文当中
All right, we are back. We're going to take a quick break, but don't worry, we will be back with more great weather predictions from our furry and feathered friends or animals. We'll be back in a second.
Storms over water, such as typhoons, change water pressure. Sharks are sensitive to that change, so they dive deeper to avoid the storms. People have looked to animals to tell them the weather for ages. However, the animals' actions might not be because of weather changes. Even so, it doesn't hurt to watch and learn from animals.
Welcome back. Before the break, we've learned that birds will fly low when they start to feel the air pressure change.
Yes, maybe a big storm's coming.
And wolves, they will howl.
Ow, 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 ow. That's my best wolf howl. So that's really interesting. Now, of course, birds and wolves obviously live on the land, and birds mostly fly over the land. So what about if you are on the ocean in a boat or something like that? Well, it says storms over water, such as typhoons, because of course typhoons will always begin over water and hurricanes as well. So storms over water, such as typhoons, change water pressure. Yes, of course, it can kind of mean the ocean is pushing down onto the seabed, the bottom of the ocean. That changes the pressure. And of course, all the animals in the water, they'll feel it. Sharks, it says, sharks are sensitive to that change. Okay, I don't know. I don't really think I'm gonna go look for sharks to know the weather because they could eat me while they're telling me things. Because sharks are very interesting animals and they're quite scary, although most sharks really aren't. Sharks are a type of fish, but they're a special type of fish. They don't have bones like fish do. They have cartilage, which is more like what your ears are made of. But they're often known as hunting fish, as predator fish, as the tigers of the sea, or something like that. Although, really, there's something like 1,000 kinds of sharks, but only 5 of them are dangerous to people. And most sharks are actually really quite small. But they do have a sort of scary feeling about them. If you're in the ocean and you see a shark swimming around, you might get a little nervous. But maybe that shark is just coming to tell you that a storm's on its way.
I think
it's a friendly shark.
I think sharks are misunderstood.
They are misunderstood. And they're wonderful animals, of course, and they do a lot to keep our oceans nice and clean. By eating, other animals that might die and stuff.
Right. And they kind of keep the balance.
They do. They're very important animals.
And they are sensitive animals.
They are absolutely, so we shouldn't eat them.
我们来看一下刚刚课文里提到的单字 shark 名词鲨鱼 Cindy saw a shark while swimming in the sea. Cindy 在海里游泳时看到了一只鲨鱼。接着我们回到课文当中。
So here we have the adjective sensitive. And to be sensitive is a type of feeling, again, where you're able to feel things a lot faster than some other people.
Or a lot more than other people.
You know, so if you're sensitive, maybe you're able to sense that someone is starting to be unhappy.
Oh, okay.
You can notice things like that. Or it could also be a sensitivity of the touch.
Yeah, for sure.
Or I'm sensitive to the cold. I get cold easily. You're sensitive to heat.
Right, yeah.
You get hot
I get hot more easily. And of course, we think of animals, right? Dogs, their noses are very sensitive. Cats' ears are very sensitive. And I think for humans, our eyes are probably the most sensitive organs that we have. So they're very good at sort of learning about the world.
Yeah. So sharks, they dive deeper to avoid the storms. Because they're so sensitive to the water pressure changes.
I see. Okay. And of course, if they're deeper below the water, those big waves and all that stuff that's happening because of the storm, that won't bother them. So they will dive down. When you dive, you're basically jumping or moving down very, very quickly. People can dive. If you jump out of a plane, we call that skydiving, and you have a parachute, you're falling down. If you're standing on the edge of a swimming pool and you jump in head first, you are diving into the pool. If you go with your feet first, that's just jumping into the pool. And if you're in the water, a person, a fish, or maybe a submarine, and you're moving from sort of just under the water to deep down, like where the Titanic is, you have to dive down as you go from a higher place down to a lower place. So they're lucky. They can just sort of swim deep below the water and they're safe. They can dive down to safety away from those storms. Very cool.
我们来看一下刚刚课文里提到的单字 sensitive 形容词敏感的 Mandy is very sensitive to loud noises. Mandy 对大声的噪音很敏感 dive 动词潜水 Luke learned to dive when he was on vacation. Luke 在度假时学会了潜水。接着我们回到课文当中。
All right, we are back. It says, people have looked to animals to tell them the weather for ages. I think that's actually quite true. Romans used to watch how birds fly to tell, what's going to happen next week or in the future. So yeah, this is not a new thing. However, the animals' actions might not be because of weather changes. What? All this stuff we learned? So it might not be because of the weather that the animals are doing this unusual thing. So there are other reasons why animals, and of course we can't ask the animals.
Right.
We can't say, Mr. Shark, why are you diving? So we don't really know. We can just give it a good guess.
But even so, it doesn't hurt to watch and learn from animals.
Absolutely. They're very cool and interesting.
Yeah, they behave in various ways and interesting ways, and maybe it does help us predict weather. We don't know that for a fact, right?
Absolutely.
So here we have the phrase, it doesn't hurt to, and you can add a verb after. It doesn't hurt to try. It doesn't hurt to
check something before you
Right.
make a mistake.
Okay, so when we say it doesn't hurt to do something, we're basically trying to say that just do it anyway.
Yeah.
Nothing bad will come out of it. Even if you're unsure about what's going to happen, just try.
Maybe you don't have to do it, but it doesn't hurt to do it. You will lose nothing if you do it, and you don't have to in the end.
我们来看一下刚刚课文里提到的文法。People have looked to animals. 人们一直依靠仰赖动物。Have 加上过去分词 PP 是现在完成式，表示一直已经做某事。Look to 指的是依靠仰赖。我们来看看这个例句。Ken has looked to friends for support during hard times. Ken 在艰难时期一直仰赖朋友的支持。下一个文法 It doesn't hurt to 加动词，做某事无妨。Hurt 在这里指的是造成损害，带来负面影响。我们来看看这个例句 It doesn't hurt to ask for help when you need it. 当你需要帮助时，问一问也无妨。接着我们回到课文当中。
All right, guys, thanks for joining us. We're going to have more great articles for you soon. But until then, we wish you all the best weather. And if you don't know what it's going to be like, ask the nearest butterfly. Bye-bye.
When the weather is stormy, the air pressure changes. That's painful to birds and wolves. As a result, birds fly low and wolves cry out before a storm comes. Storms over water, such as typhoons, change water pressure. Sharks are sensitive to that change, so they dive deeper to avoid the storms. People have looked to animals to tell them the weather for ages. However, the animals' actions might not be because of weather changes. Even so, it doesn't hurt to watch and learn from animals.
我们来复习一下这一课的重点单字跟文法。单字的部分 Stormy 形容词，暴风雨的。Pressure 名词，压力，气体或液体的压力。Low 副词，向低处的。Shark 名词，鲨鱼。Sensitive 形容词，敏感的。Dive 动词，潜水。接着我们来看文法的部分。Cry out 大声喊叫。John cried out when I stepped on his toes. John 在我踩到他的脚趾时大叫了一声。People have looked to animals. 人们一直依靠仰赖动物。Mark has looked to his best friend for advice. Mark 一直仰赖他最好朋友的建议。It doesn't hurt to 加动词，做某事无妨。It doesn't hurt to try new things. 尝试新事物有益无害。以上就是这一课的重点单字跟文法，那我们下一次再见喽，拜拜。
Wow, Winnie, this was such a good idea. It's such a nice day to have a picnic. And you came so prepared. I didn't even know we had this picnic mat.
Well, I figured it's been a while since we just hung out, so I thought, why not set up a picnic at a nice park and just relax?
That's very thoughtful.
I even brought a basket full of our favorite things. A food container full of some homemade sandwiches.
Homemade? You made those?
Homemade by someone else. Anyway, we also have some reusable utensils.
Ooh.
And we have some snacks, and we'll be super full.
Oh, that sounds really good, but I'm starting to get itchy. I think I'm getting bit by
Mosquitoes? Not to fret. I have some mosquito repellent right here.
Wow, you really did come prepared, Winnie.
Dig in.
Okay. Well, we had a really nice picnic today.
And a picnic is a great way to enjoy nature without having to go too far.
And it's just also a nice way to spend some time with your friends and family.
And you get to pick out whatever you want to eat.
That's true.
That's all we have for today. Remember to follow us on Instagram and send us a DM or an email if there's something you want to say in English and you just don't know how. Kiki, anything you want to say.
Remember to take your trash with you. Kiwi later.